Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Bomb Busters from Pegasus Spill. Bomb Busters is a 2 to 5 player sort of deduction game. It's a limited communication game in which we're trying to cooperatively figure out how to cut the wires without things going boom, while working through the game's various tricks and things that'll throw in your way. Because there are 66 missions in this game. The first 8 missions are going to guide you through basically the tutorial, giving you kind of just learning the ropes, getting you started without any red or yellow wires that are going to get in the way, teaching you what to do, and then slowly introducing the main mechanics until you get to level 8. Level 8 is going to be basically what a normal game of Bomb Busters would look like. From there are 66 total missions. After those first 8, there are 56 more missions in 5 different boxes, giving you a series of new various challenges to go through. New components, new cards, new equipment, new things that will throw you for a loop while maintaining that same core concept. As far as what that core concept is, you basically have wires. You have a whole pile of wires over here, and you're trying to cut the wires while not cutting the yellow or red wires when you shouldn't do so. Cutting the yellow wires, not great. Cutting the red wires, the bomb goes boom. Anytime you cut something wrong that you didn't intend to cut, you're going to watch the timer slowly tick down. Basically, you lose when the timer goes to 0, and I don't know if you're a timer, your chances. If a certain number of chances you have equal to the player count, as you run out of chances, you will die. Or if at any point you cut the red wire when you aren't supposed to, and it's not the last wire, then you die. As far as what it means to cut wires, you're going to start the game off, and this is a little different with the training scenarios, because the training scenarios kind of walk you through some basic stuff, skipping some of these things, but the basic arc of the game, let's go ahead and straight look at Mission 8 over here. Mission 8 will tell us that we have 1 out of 2 red wires, and 2 out of 3 yellow wires. That means we would look at 2 different red wires, and we would look at 3 different yellow wires, and we're going to mark that we have these wires in play. We're going to take a little question mark. We have a 4.1 over here. We have a 1.1, and the question mark is important because we don't actually know what we're going for right now. And then we have an 8.1. Those are possible wires in place. On the reds over here, we have the 2.5 and the 4.5, so let's mark that, 2.5 and the 4.5, and this way all the players know that those are the possible options in play. From there, you're going to shuffle it up. It says 1 of 2 and 2 of 3. So we're going to flip these down over here, and then we're going to shuffle them up over here, just mix them around, and then try to take 1 of them, and then shuffling these up over here, and taking 2 of them, such that we know that 2 of these yellows and 1 of these reds are in play, and we're going to put it into the greater giant pile full of all these other 1 through 48 of these other tiles. Well, technically not really 1 through 48, it's 1 through 12 times 4. There's 4 copies of each wire. Then you're going to take a bunch of wires, depending on the player count. I'm just going to grab 12 right now for simplicity's sake, but depending on the player count, you have playing 2 to 5 players. The more people you have, the more wires you're grabbing. At lower player counts, we'll be playing with multiple hands, each of these trays being a hand, and we're going to slowly sort out my actual board over here. So I'm just going to do this briefly just to give you a sense of what this is like. So right now, if I'm looking at my board over here, I'm placing that. I am placing them as these in ascending order. Now it's worth noting, hypothetically, if I did have that yellow 8.5, it would go in my grid in the 8.5 in order, but it's not an 8.5, it's not an 8, it is simply defining the order of where it goes. It is just a yellow wire. So I've created my board over here. This is my board of these tiles. Did I even do 12? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I did 11. Let's go ahead and grab one more wire. I just grabbed a wire, which I'm not going to say anything because they're not supposed to. I'm going to place these wires down, place them into my grid. Now, on a turn, what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and cut wires. You're going to look at your own board over here and try to figure out, okay, well, I know what my board looks like. I know which of these numbers I have. Therefore, I can make educated guesses. For example, let's just make it hypothetical. If I have no 12s on my board, then I know that there's a decent chance that other players have a 12 at their high end. Sure, it's possible that one player has all the 12s, but there are 4 12s in play. I have 0 of them. Let's say it's a 3-player, let's say it's a 4-player game. There's likely going to be at least one 12 on some of those ends. Now that doesn't actually help me right now because you have to cut wires you do have. Basically, you're going to look at your opponent's board and say, oh, I know what that is. I think I know what that is, so I'm going to cut a 6 on your board. You point to it, you cut it. If you're right, you then reveal your own 6. You're cutting a pair of 6s. If you're wrong, unfortunately you tip this down over here and you slowly run out of time and you're eventually going to blow up. Now there are tools at your disposal. For example, when you first begin the game, players are going to take one of these to point to one of theirs. So for example, I'm going to take this over here and I'm going to point it to that, showing that I have a 5 as that one, meaning players know that this one's a 5, and to the left of it could be a 5 or could be lower. To the right of it could be a 5 or could be higher. But I know that much information as far as where my tiles are, and that gives gives you more tools as far as what to cut, or even just trying to read into what was the best option for you to have shown me, what makes the most sense to try to broadcast as much information as possible. Whenever you do get things wrong, you do reveal more things as well. So whenever you count this down, you are at least getting information along the way, keeping in mind, of course, that you will eventually die, so you have to be mindful of that. And again, if you ever cut the red wire when you shouldn't, that's a problem. This is a good time to note that, for example, with that red wire, anything above a 5 is safe from a red wire being cut. It doesn't mean you won't be right or wrong, but it means you're safe from a red wire being cut, so maybe trying to take out the higher numbers could be better. Ultimately, there's a lot of information at your disposal between you looking at your own board and trying to get a sense of what's there over there, and then looking at your opponent's board, making judgment calls, and also using various equipment. As you cut wires, you'll unlock various equipment that will help you out on your quest. Well, quest being to not die as you cut bombs, and that's basically how you play through a scenario of Bomb Busters. The first 8 missions, that tutorial, they guide you through that. You start off with no red wires at all, no yellow wires, no red wires, just the basic cutting process. From there, it adds in reds, it adds in yellow, it slowly adds in the mixing part where it's like you don't just have one yellow, you have one of 2 yellows, which throws you off more because before I knew there's a 4.5 and I knew there's yellows are 1s. I knew there's a 4.1, I knew there's an 8.1. Now I don't know which one is in play, so as I'm looking at your board, it's slightly harder to make those calls. It slowly adds in equipment, and then when you're done with your first 8 scenarios, you can then go ahead and open up your first box, which I'm not going to spoil what's in the boxes, but the boxes do add more mechanics at play, more challenges. Sometimes there are things that are in the boxes that you're using. Other times there's just a new rule that honestly didn't need to be in that particular box, but you're just going through things along the way, adding more things that make this process more difficult and therefore more rewarding. That is how you play through Bomb Busters, which means it's time for my review of this game. Overall, when I first found out about Bomb Busters, I wasn't really that interested in it initially, but then it won this Build this Yaris and all that, and so suddenly I was more on my radar. And as I looked into the rules of it, I couldn't quite figure out what was so compelling, because it kind of feels like it's just guessing. It feels like you're just like, sure, statistical guessing to a certain degree, but like the game just feels like, okay, you know, it's probably a 9 over there. Like if you've played Trio and your Trio's more competitive, but if you're like, oh, what's your highest card? A 12. This kind of has that vibe. What's your highest number? Probably a 12. But also it could be that they have 2 12s, they have 2 12s, and you have no 12. So it's just statistical guessing as you try not to blow up, which didn't feel that charming to me. But as I played it, I found that it is significantly more rewarding than that. And I don't have an easy reason as to why, because ultimately, it is statistical-based guessing. Part of the challenge is learning when to use the tools at your disposal. When do you want to use that piece of equipment? You also start off with your own personal piece of equipment that gives you a little bit of ways of beating the odds. Learning when to use the pieces of equipment. Learning to read the yellows and the reds. Learning where you can afford to take risks and where less so. Learning which guesses you can make that will inherently help others start deducing what's behind your screen. Learning which piece of information to reveal to players at the start of the game. There's a lot of small tools at your disposal that makes this very, very compelling, despite being an incredibly simple rule set. The 8 tutorials, the 8 tutorial missions you go through, do a great job at ramping the players up through the missions, trying to give them a sense of, here's how to play, but now let's slowly add the things until you get to that core mission. Mission number 8 is a great example of a core structured mission without being too easy, without adding new things. It's just what a pure game of Bomb Busters is. But then as you open up the boxes, you unlock new things as well, which is fun. Like 66 missions. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of fluff and similar missions in between them. I should also note I have not played through all 66 missions, but I've played through the first 8 and then jumped around from box to boxes to get a sample of what's out there. So there's definitely some degree of repetitive fluff within them. I don't think it feels like 66 missions, but you certainly can go through it. If you're familiar with games like The Crew, you're not going to have every single one feeling uniquely different, but there's enough new mechanics in there that it does feel rewarding to go through it. This is a game that if you do get this game and if you find yourself getting bored of where you're up to, open another box and just start going through it. There are fun things to be found. You don't need to go through them all directly in order to actually benefit and explore this game. You can do it how you want. The boxes are just there to give you those aspects. But it feels like a strong sense of collaboration. It feels like it builds upon a pretty clean system and then gives you a lot of things to throw on top of that. From gear, from equipment, from the various stuff you'll earn in other boxes, and then even from the starting just tools that you have to be able to show information to the players. Overall, Bomb Busters impressed me with how much they do with such a clean, simple rule set, with how collaborative it feels, with how rewarding it feels, with that risk versus reward balance that does feel like you do have to make risky calls at times, like that guesswork certainly is present, but it feels like it gives you enough tools that you can play it well and get on the same vibe check with your team. But it also throws you through a loop in ways that you do have to react and adjust to what the game is doing. That first time that you throw in those yellow and red wires is confusing because you're so used to thinking of, well, this 4 4s, and therefore if that's not a 4, that has to be a 3. But oops, it's a 4.1 and you just cut a yellow wire. But you're going to start learning those patterns as those things start to happen. And then suddenly as soon as you start having selections of wires, you no longer know that there's a 9.1 in play. There could be a 9.1 and you have to adapt around that information. There's a lot of learning how to play based on the new thing that the game threw at you as you go through this that ends up being a significantly more rewarding party/strategy game than I first thought it would be. As far as things I don't like in the game, there is very much that luck. There's a lot that I like as far as the overall vibes, the feeling, the party game, but not really that it gives you. But it still does have a healthy dose of luck. Sure, you can make the right judgment call as to when to have used your double detector or which of these pieces of equipment to use at any given point, but there are also going to be times where you sit there and play the odds, and the odds cause you to go boom. And I don't even mean the red wire, but a few bad calls as far as how things should have statistically played out can result in you losing. And so this is one of those games where you don't have enough information to you don't have enough tools or information that you have to make judgment calls. You have to make educated guesses at times. And that means that you are playing a game that is both strategy, it's both intuitive being on the same page, but you're also going to have those moments where things blow up in your face, pun intended, and there's nothing you could have done because sometimes the odds just don't matter. You just have to play the game as it is. And so that's the only really thing that holds it back for me, but also it's a little bit of a party game, so I don't know how much of a hold up that is. You just have to know what type of game you're getting yourself into. Overall, final thoughts-wise, I'm going to give Bombusters a 4 out of 5. It is fun, it is charming, it is a good collaborative system. I am excited to continue to explore it. I think it's one of those games that, it's hard to say, when I think of games like this, I have some games like The Mind that have been in my collection for who knows how long and I continuously return to. Others I feel like I go through what they have to offer and then I move on from them thinking I've seen what the game has to offer. I'm still in the exploratory phase of Bombusters. I'm still dabbling around with it. I'm still going through some of the new boxes. I still haven't played through all the missions, and so I'm still enjoying this one for what it is. It's one of those games that just, if you like hidden information or limited information in a collaborative system where you have to try to figure it out together while being on the same wavelength, I do very much think Bombusters is one worth checking out. A 4 out of 5. As far as the other game recommendations, definitely check out The Crew for a game that's going to have that limited information with a trick-taking puzzle instead. Very, very different game, but it has those similar vibes as to making educated guesses, playing the best hand you can, while working within limited information, and also working with like 50+ missions you can go ahead and go with. Although I do recommend The Crew Deep Sea if you want the more iterative challenges that they create. And then also check out Shipwreck Arcana. That's another cooperative game of limited information that is, I don't hear it talked about quite as much, but if you're looking for something that's beautifully presented and also has a small amount of guesswork while also working with the tools at your disposal in a very clever way, check out the Shipwreck Arcana for a fascinating, cooperative, limited communication deduction game. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this review helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.